There's many lies that were spread about Native Americans through, government propaganda. We were savages, we were Indians, we were basically lesser beings than dogs.
The post-gold rush era was the most dangerous time in our history to be a California Indian. Most people did not survive it.
Nicole Myers-Lim and Jaden Lim are mother and daughter. They are also Pomo women who grew up knowing their family survived violence. That was in part spurred on by some of the propaganda that Jaden referred to earlier. Greed for gold in California was pushed through advertisements, articles, and cartoons like these. You can see here in this drawing a 49er carrying several pistols and a rifle. In this picture, a miner is strapped with a gun and a knife while wielding 2 mining tools. And the woman next to him, she's also armed with a gun and a knife. The subtext in pictures like these wasn't lost on the 49ers. 300,000 people poured into California during the gold rush. A lot of them were heavily armed, which led to dangerous and violent behavior in American genocide.
The U.S. Army played a role in the militia campaigns by arming them. So surplus U.S. Army weapons like guns, pistols, ammunition, sabers, cutlasses, those were given to the state of California by the United States Army.
Between 1848 and 1852, white settlers in California spent $6 million on knives and pistols alone. That's about $200 million today.
They were well armed for the violence of genocide.
Ranches would take hundreds of Native men and send them up to the mines. It was very common that Native people were treated as disposable during that time. They weren't given food or water. They were just basically treated as disposable workers.
Some of the white miners wanted to eliminate competition from Native Americans mining freely. But for others, the period was just an excuse for brutal slaughter.
Kelsey and Stone took 100 Pomo men from our tribe to the gold rush and only 3 returned. They were also keeping young Pomo women as sex slaves in their home. The Native men of the tribe went and murdered Kelsey and Stone, and as a result, the U.S. Cavalry came and massacred our tribe.
Today, this attack of retaliation is known as the Bloody Island Massacre.
It was often said that Bloody Island was a fishing village, and it was very likely that nobody involved with the events that took place in Stone and Kelsey was actually here. It was just a community, a peaceful community.
My great-great-great-great-grandmother hid under her mother's dead body in order to survive. The other children of the tribe hid in the lake surrounding Bloody Island and used tule reeds as a way to breathe while underwater. A lot of academics and historians and people who recount the events of what happened there always say that the lake ran red with the blood of the Native people that lived there.
They estimate in the mass grave at Bloody Island that there's anywhere between 10 and 800 Pomo people. Nobody counted, nobody cared to account for the atrocities that took place.
What we know for certain is that most of the people killed were women and children. We also know that no one was held accountable.
The men who committed these acts were not censured. They weren't court-martialed. They weren't kicked out of the army. In fact, all of the men who participated were eventually promoted.
Governor Burnett was the first governor of California, and in his opening speech, his first speech to the citizens of California, he waged a war of extermination on California Indians and discussed in his speech about it being a necessity and being inevitable. That's very much a part of Manifest Destiny.
In addition to violence from independent white settlers and militia supported by the Army, California's newly established government passed an act that authorized the organization of ranger militias,
with the aim of capturing or killing all California Indian people.
From 1850 to 1861, just 11 years, they were sent on 24 killing campaigns.
And these 24 operations killed an absolute minimum of 1,340 California Indian people. And that's a really low-end estimate. That's a very conservative way of thinking about these numbers.
These 24 campaigns cost California more than $1.5 million. That's more than $50 million today. And the U.S. Congress reimbursed the territory almost in full.
I think it is pretty shameful that the fact that they can spend so much money on killing Native peoples and not spend any money on guaranteeing that our youth have a future.
In 1850, California's first government also passed the ironically named Act for the Government and Protection of Indians, which listed 20 restrictions on Native American life. It stripped them of legal rights and protections. One example of this, someone who was just loitering could be arrested, and at worst, enslaved.
California Indians couldn't carry a firearm. California Indians couldn't testify against a white person in a court of law. Any Indian child that was found without a guardian could be taken into indenture with a white family until their age of majority. That age of majority was well into their 30s.
A big goal of this act was to separate Native Americans during peak reproductive years, in order to separate at least one generation of children and adults from their families and culture.
Ultimately, the government wanted to kill every last Native American person, which means I shouldn't be here. I should not have been born.
There's a lot of silent graves in California. There's a lot of places that don't have names and stories of people attached to them, where people can't go and say, I'm a survivor of this place. The state of California paid bounties, anywhere from 50 cents to $5. And they found the receipts in the 1990s, and they totaled over $1.6 million. So if you just put a rough estimate of bounties into that $1.6 million figure, you're seeing, easily 300,000 people died during the gold rush itself.
Despite these dark truths, the 49ers are celebrated today throughout popular culture and the history of California.
Racism is racism. And you can't it's like being a little bit pregnant. You're either pregnant or you're not. It's either racist or it's not.
Inside the 10, touchdown Redskins.
It's just a football team. We are your
That to me is not honoring somebody. That to me is demeaning.
It is utterly unidimensional. They're warriors, they're braves in breech cloths, rather than Native peoples as they were even then, and certainly are now.
We have suffered at the hands of a federal government who essentially wanted to annihilate every single one of us.
And if it was any other race of people, nobody would stand for it.
We are people first, not Redskins. We are not scalps, we are not chiefs, we're not squads.
It's up to Native peoples to own their own images, to own their own words, and to be able to own their own feelings.
We have a voice now.
We're done having people not hear us, and I think we're done playing nice.
We're not going to stop.
There's teams across school districts that still need to make the change.
This is still an issue.
You make this any other racial group where you do a ridiculous caricature like that, and people get it right away. Ooh, that's racist. But for some reason, when they see this one, everyone's like, well, yeah, that's our team.
Historically accurate. Don't understand why we need to be a mascot.
Native American people don't look like this.
I don't understand what the hair is.
He looks nice. Yeah, he looks really kind.
That looks like a child did it.
They don't do this with anyone else but animals and Native Americans.
It's me that like one of the symbols that people recognize about our people is a weapon.
This is this weird, outdated view of what it means to be Native.
We only brought those out in defense of ourselves, our land, our people.
You see the Atlantic Games and they're doing the ooh.
one very specific and very outdated image.
This is another one that really depersonalizes our people.
The fact that a people group is your mascot, like, that's just not okay.
It's just weird, because then everybody shows up acting like a stereotypical version of that, right? Not trying to be mean in any way, it's still contributing to the fact that people are supporting this team looking like this.
When I look at those pictures, it breaks my heart.
We don't need to have like human beings represented as mascots.
And they're like, nah, you don't know what you're talking about.
Well, a lot of them say they're just honoring us.
I don't feel honored.
I don't think it's honoring us in the least. It's very hurtful.
It's not always just about you and how you feel. It's about the people who are involved. It's about the people whose feelings are being affected by this.
So why aren't we taught about this?
I think we've had a kind of institutionalized amnesia about the genocide of California Indians here in the state.
America does not want to acknowledge the atrocities and the crimes that they have committed. I see the hurt in my community because of this history and because of the trauma that this country has inflicted upon my people.
The last stage of genocide is denial. And as we continue to deny this history and not teach truth and authenticity, we perpetuate that genocide.